Well, hello, y'all. Welcome back. As you can see, we are not at Hungary. We are instead at Austria at the moment because this is not the preview for the next race, which is where is that next race at? The Netherlands, the Zandvoort race. So this isn't the typical weekly cadence of Hungary review and Zandvoort preview, which we'll probably talk a little bit about Hungary in this, but I kind of want this to be more of just a mid-season review, kind of take stock of what I think of the teams and drivers here at this midway point of the season, and just do a little drive around Austria while we're at it. Why not? Get some racing action on the screen. If I do stop to talk, mid-sentence, I am driving, like actively driving while recording this. As in, I'm driving this race, I'm not pre-recording it. So, I'll occasionally have to look away. If I drive off the track weirdly, then I'm probably overlooking at notes or something. We do have the AI tuned down from what I do in my career mode, so I should have a pretty good chance of rushing up to and racing with them. But enough with the waffle and babbling. We're 14 races into a 24 race season, so the mid-season break is just a little bit past the midway mark, but there are definitely some interesting things developing, and we'll kind of just work our way, down the grid, I think. So obviously the season is very much a runaway season for McLaren. They've come out with a very good car and are for the most part making very good use of it. I think they've got 4 or 5 1-2 finishes in a row now. It's pretty much just them. I think Canada is the only thing that really breaks their streak. So the McLaren very much looking like the best car, and it was looking that way at the end of last season. The real surprise for this season is the progress and the steps that Oscar Piastri has made. I'm sure if you told everyone at the end of last year that McLaren would have the standout best car, it would be a safe bet to say that we're looking at a very good Lando Norris championship opportunity. However, that's not come to play. Oscar Piastri in his third year of F1? Hello, yeah, you want to get off my car? Thank you. In his, I think, third year of Formula One, has taken some big steps. And, I've said it in a lot of the weekend reviews. His racecraft looks very good. And he's challenged Lando. Lando has made quite a few mistakes. I still think on their day, Lando is the quicker driver. Spoilers for, things I'll probably talk about in the Hungary kind of review is, I think that pace-wise, Lando kind of had just enough to keep Oscar off. Granted, Oscar had some mistake, or had the big lockup. But overall, I think, I don't think if they had kept the same strategy for both cars that Oscar would have been quite as close to winning that race. He does seem to still not be quite as good on the tire wear as Lando is. But Oscar Piastri, it's a 9-point advantage at the mid-season break, so it's a pretty close fight. There was a stretch in the middle there where it was looking like Lando was really struggling and Oscar might start to run away with it. But Lando has bounced back from those few races well, especially, the lows of Canada, and is, still going to be an interesting fight all the way to the end. So we'll continue to see. I do think that Lando has been fortunate so far this season in the races where it's been, getting the right tire strategy and picking between the 1 and 2 stop has been important. I think in general, Lando has started those races behind. Obviously, Hungary last time out comes to mind. Imola early in the season also comes to mind. A couple of races where McLaren kind of went to cover off the nearest challenger, Verstappen or Leclerc in this latest case, and has kind of not been running their own race, and they've been kind of worrying about protecting against and reacting to cars that are just much slower than them. So realistically, I think, development-wise, McLaren is still pushing on with bringing upgrades to the car. They're not standing idle. I believe Red Bull is pretty much done with their upgrades. I think they may have one or two more small things in the pipeline, but they've already brought their big floor upgrade. And similar to other cars on the grid, Ferrari have brought their big rear suspension and floor upgrade. Mercedes still struggling with understanding the car. They actually rolled their suspension upgrade back to an older variant of the suspension. And I think that at a certain point, they're just going to be kind of spinning their wheels. But let's not get too caught up in that. We'll talk about that when we talk about the actual team's championship, or the Constructors' Championship. Because after the 1-2 of McLaren, obviously, you then have Max Verstappen, who has just about been able to keep his Red Bull there in P3 in the mix. The car has struggled significantly this year, and lately it's looked a handful to drive, but his closest challenger in the Drivers' Championship is George Russell, and George Russell, had that very, very strong start. I said it multiple times at the in the early reviews that Mercedes looked to be the second fastest car and pretty easy to drive at the same time. So I believe, what do we got? It's only 15 points between Verstappen and Russell. So depending on, it seems both of those cars seem to be in a bit of the doldrums as far as figuring out how to make it work. Depending on who dials it in, because at this point it's just going to be about understanding and getting the car set up right, more so than new parts coming to the car. So whichever team can get that one figured out before the end of the season, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that George Russell could jump Verstappen for P3 in the Drivers' Championship. But we've seen how Verstappen does down the stretch. He's typically pretty good at a lot of the tracks coming up. He's got a home race in Zandvoort, which should be a big boon, and he'll want to show out for that crowd. So we'll have to wait and see. After that, you've got, after George Russell in P4, you have the two Ferrari boys. Leclerc, a good solid 50 points clear, or 40 some odd points clear of Lewis Hamilton, as well as, picking up a decent number of podiums. Lewis Hamilton has not been, I'm sure not been what he's wanted when it comes to his Ferrari journey so far. He's really struggled to kind of get the handle on the car. He's been very down on himself in his comments in the media as well. You thought, and you had the hope early on, that it was going to start to pick up because he, had that really good showing at the sprint in China, but really that form just hasn't quite materialized. I know they've been running into some problems with the car itself. Just how much Leclerc dropped off at the tail end of the Hungarian Grand Prix race in order to save the car. So they are also, struggling to understand the upgrades and how the car is behaving at a lot of tracks this year. And, they've been getting the strategy part cleaned up. Communication has, still been Ferrari, but the strategy has overall not been bad. It's been pretty decent. After the Ferrari duo, who do we have next? I think it's, might be Kimi? Yeah, Kimi Antonelli, who is a ways off of his teammate, George Russell. And, Antonelli came out of the blocks looking pretty good. The last few races, I think, he's definitely been struggling. He's not looked as sharp as, you would kind of hope of him. And so hopefully that's something that, a little time off gets him a mental reset. From all accounts, Lewis has been quite the mentor and spending actually a lot of time talking to Kimi Antonelli. Whether that's sabotaging the rookie who took his seat, no, he's typically been quite the elder statesman. But yeah, Kimi Antonelli, for as good as that Mercedes car was, especially early in the season, he just hasn't quite been producing. He's the highest scoring of all the rookies. He is in the best car of all the rookies. But I think he's not been, compared to his teammate, the best of the rookies on the grid. He's been decent, but I know his path to F1 skipped some steps to fast track him in as well. So I know that's playing probably a bit of a role in his development. He's a good kid to learn. So he's just going to have a lot more to continue to learn. After that, we head now to Alex Albon next on the list, and was scoring points really well, especially early in the season when the Williams was looking, pretty clear of the rest of the midfield, and he managed to grab a good share of points at that stage. Especially when Carlos Sainz was struggling at the same time, was really looking like, Alex Albon was putting the performances down. That difference between the teammates has definitely balanced out in the last handful of races. Carlos Sainz is starting to get there, but Williams also went through that pretty significant span of reliability issues for a number of races. So we'll see what the Williams team can do. Of course, we'll talk more about teams themselves. But Alex Albon continues to show that he is a very capable and quick driver on the circuit. My goodness, we are 10 seconds behind Lando Norris. I didn't realize we had fallen that far back. Huh. Well, we'll see if we can catch him before the end of the race. I've been just kind of cruising. But, Alex Albon has proved he is what we thought he is, that, going to Williams, he's done quite well there. And the Williams car has had its ups and downs, so we'll have to see if they can get that car sorted for the end of the year. Of course, I would expect that a lot of teams are going to really not see too many more actual developments on the 2025 car. With only 10 races to go, I'm assuming the 2026 car is going to be kind of 100% focused, and it's just going to be about dialing in the setups of them. After Alex Albon buoyed by a pretty historic moment, his first career podium, you all know it, Nico Hülkenberg. That's 15 of his 37 points came from that podium, and I totally didn't pit on the lap I should have. So I mean, it's when you start getting to the lower part of the midfield, where you're just on the border of points, that's where it really, a single big result can really change your fortunes, and that is a huge result for Sauber. He's had his ups and downs. I do think, though, what he's doing in the Sauber this year is not particularly important. He's going to be a phenomenal hand to help guide the development of the 2026 car, and especially getting it set up. He's that knowledgeable driver. Take a little trip on the gravel, and he's up against a rookie in Gabriel Bortoleto, so there's not exactly a measuring stick for how Nico's doing, but compared to the midfield, you're seeing that he is, in fact, putting up some pretty solid performances in a car that, coming into the season, we thought was probably just going to be a punt until the Audi group took over the car.
Charles is in for a stop
who do
now.
we have next? We got the Haas of Esteban Ocon, who has been pretty quietly putting together a decent season in the Haas overall. It's not the best car on the grid by any means, and he's been putting together a pretty solid season. It's been pretty anonymous. I don't have a lot to say about what Esteban has been doing. just because you hardly really ever see him on race day, because it's, you know, in that back of the pack, back of the midfield, where things, you know, are not the focus, especially when the racing, or not necessarily the wheel-to-wheel racing, but the fight for the championship up front and what's going on has been occupying so much screen time. Who do we have next on this one, once I can look over? Fernando Alonso, the Aston Martin car really started the season pretty rough and unfortunate. Fernando Alonso had one of his worst runs of his career as far as not scoring points to start this season. Once he did get on the board, he ran together a few top 10 finishes, but I mean only tied with his teammate Lance Stroll. 26 points for both of them is, you know, not exactly the number that that Lawrence Stroll is going to want to see as the owner of the Aston Martin team. Of course, big news for Aston Martin, the car company as well, which is also part of Lawrence Stroll's ownership group. He is involved with the car ownership. That's kind of that combination that brought that sponsorship on. But the F1 team portion is fully divesting. It had about a 4.6% ownership stake in the actual Aston Martin car company. It is selling that stake at the end of this year. So we'll see how the sponsorship is. I mean, Lawrence Stroll does still, you know, have significant ownership in both. I think he's the largest shareholder, but not a majority shareholder. He owns about 33% of the Aston Martin car company. So we'll see what that does as far as, you know, the what it means to the business and what it means to the sponsorships in 2026. Does it, you know, is this a signal that Lawrence is also looking to get potentially out of the F1 part of the business as well? I doubt that. But of course, you know, the more shares go to people that are not Lawrence Stroll when it comes to the F1 team, the less, well, I won't say less is the way, but the more likely there is other voices that if Lance Stroll continues to not really perform, that, you know, his son's favorite toy could be taken away. And maybe we see Lance Stroll out of a seat at some point. But I think realistically it's more we might see the Aston Martin F1 team be named something different with a different title sponsor relatively soon. So that's the both Aston Martin drivers, because they are right next to each other. Who do we have next as I scroll? Isaac Hadjar has had a pretty good season as a rookie in that Racing Bulls car. Obviously started the season really, really rough with that formation lap DNF in Australia in the rain. Granted, a lot of rookies did not fare very well in that rainy race anyway. They just happened to make it a little bit further than he did. But Isaac Hadjar definitely has shown he's got very good pace. You know, was matched up against Yuki Tsunoda to start the season. Then the quick driver transfer meant that Liam Lawson became his teammate for the next portion.
I've got information on Albon for you. Okay, they're out of this race.
Thank you, Mark, for telling me. After that, we've got Carlos Sainz, who's picked up 16 points. As I was saying earlier, he really was kind of getting familiar with the car in the stage where the car was decent enough to be regularly scoring points. Alex Albon, obviously very familiar with the car, is bedded in with the team. Took good advantage of that. Carlos Sainz did manage to pick up some points-paying finishes a little later on, but he was definitely on the back foot compared to Albon to start the year. And the points totals definitely show it. So we'll see if that Williams becomes, you know, maintains his position. I think Carlos Sainz is a capable driver to close the gap to Albon. How I would rate both of them, I would honestly rate Carlos and Alex relatively similar in overall pace. I think Carlos has the assertiveness, as we saw at Ferrari, that he will at times kind of call his own strategy. So I think we may see that towards the end of the year. I know Alex Albon has been getting frustrated with the Williams team on the radio at different portions as well. So we'll see how the strategy of that team goes on. Next up, Yuki Tsunoda, only 10 points on the campaign. You know, that after 2 races being switched from the Racing Bulls, where he was, you know, I honestly think he would score more points in the RB than in the Red Bull. My personal opinion was I think he should have started the season in the Red Bull. I think it should have been Max and Yuki in the Red Bull. Liam Lawson could have used a full season in the VCARB team alongside Isaac Hadjar. Granted, I understand you don't really want a team to have, you know, be full of 2 rookies, because then you kind of lose the benchmark. But I think Isaac Hadjar, and after Liam Lawson has regained his kind of confidence, I think they are more than capable of being good benchmarks to where the car is at. And you know, Yuki Tsunoda has not impressed. I'll be, I guess, not super gentle with it, but since coming into the Red Bull, it's been a real disappointment. He's not made a lot of Q3s. He's not scored many points. Has he scored any points in the Red Bull? I think he's maybe scored 1 or 2 points in the Red Bull. I'll have to like do some math at some point. But you know, I rate Yuki Tsunoda well. I think it just speaks more to how tricky that Red Bull car is. That you know, now we're seeing Verstappen struggle at times to get that car into the top 5, and you know, Yuki Tsunoda is pretty much nowhere. Oh, I skipped somebody. Apologies, because it's the driver I think is actually turning into be the best overall package as a rookie, and I think that is Gabriel Bortoleto. He's looked very solid alongside a good measuring stick in Nico Hulkenberg. Granted, the Sauber doesn't give quite the opportunity to show its colors, but he's found his way into Q3 a few times. He's scored 14 points in a Sauber. And if you think about it, Nico has scored 37 points. You take away the podium and you're looking at 22 to 14 points between the two drivers otherwise. I think it's a pretty good comparison for Gabriel Bortoleto. He's also, I think, been the least mistake prone of the drivers so far. Obviously, all the rookies have been rookies, not drivers, but rookie drivers. Obviously, everybody makes their mistakes, but Gabriel Bortoleto has impressed me this year, and I think it'll be good. He's in a seat that doesn't have that looming worry that you get at teams like VCARB. This could be it. I think he's pretty secure in his seat. It'll be nice to see him in the Audi experiment as well. So yeah, he slots in ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in the Drivers' Championship by 4 points. Oliver Behrman, a driver that came in with a lot of promise. We saw his super sub appearances for Ferrari in Jeddah last year, as well as his sub for Haas, where he looked pretty good. This year, I think more of his flaws are becoming a little more visible as he's had more time. You just get a bigger sample size. He is a bit mistake prone. He's multiple times made kind of boneheaded penalties as far as picking up penalties for overtaking cars under yellow flags or red flags. He's done it a couple of times now. He spun and crashed on his way into the pit lane in Silverstone under a red flag. Things like that, and he's not stacked up particularly well with Ocon as in addition. Like, your teammate's your first comparison, and so that's typically when I'm rating these rookies. going to kind of look and see how they stack up against their teammates. I also realize that constantly trying to go and just take quick glances at it means I'm missing people in the order, because I realized I did not talk about Liam Lawson, who is Liam Lawson or Pierre Gasly, actually. So let's walk ourselves back up the ladder just a little bit. So these guys come just after Isaac Hadjar in the order, as I nearly drive off the road. But you got Pierre Gasly, who in an Alpine that looked early on like it might not score any points, and at even other times of the season has looked like it might not score any other points. He's made, made good progress in the crazy races. Pierre Gasly is still a stellar driver and is doing well with the chaos that is whatever is happening in that Alpine garage. So credit to Pierre Gasly. It's not exactly a big haul of points, but he's got all of his team's points at this stage, and he's still showing that he can get the job done. And then right after Pierre Gasly is Liam Lawson, which is what I was reminded of when I was talking about the rookies there. Liam Lawson, of course, a huge hit to the confidence. Only getting the 2 races to try and figure it out in the Red Bull seat. Like I said when I was talking about Yuki, I don't think they should have started Liam in that Red Bull seat. I think they should have just given him the Racing Bull seat and let him have a full season to develop and get filled out. I mean, he had kind of a handful of 4 and 5 race stints, but it's not the same as not being a substitute, so to speak. So Liam Lawson, I think a credit to him as a person that he has bounced back the way he has. He's starting to really kind of start to take the fight to Isaac Hadjar. I think he could have probably been a bit more humble on his way into Formula One. He very famously has tussled with Fernando Alonso and rubbed quite a few people the wrong way with some of his statements, but he's just a cocky, confident kid, and when you reach the pinnacle of any sport, you expect that you're kind of going to see that, and it's probably, for a lot of them, the reason why they can get up there is because they believe in themselves so much that they reach that pinnacle. But yeah, Liam Lawson, he's starting to look, like he's got his confidence back in the RB, starting to have a nice, good scrap with Isaac Hadjar in there, which is turning into a fun little team dynamic to see. I mean, the RB team doesn't typically tell them or allow them to fight. They'll typically put cars on opposite strategies, so there's a pretty obvious wave through when they do meet each other on track. But I think Liam Lawson has the opportunity to be a pretty decent driver on the grid overall. So now that we've caught up with all the people that I've missed, we just have the 2 remaining drivers, the only ones that have not scored any points, and they both occupied essentially the same seat at different points of the year. Jack Doohan, I think it's real unfortunate that he was swapped out so quickly, and not just swapped out to a different team. Like, I think he kind of got the same amount of leash that Liam Lawson did. The difference is Red Bull has 2 teams and can just swap him around. Jack Doohan, he didn't really impress in those first few races, to be honest, but he was a very green rookie, not a lot of seat time. And I think it was kind of understandable that he would not be on the money right away, and I would have liked to have seen him have a little more opportunity, especially because they replaced him with Franco Colapinto, who has come in and really not been much of anything. He's crashed the car a few times. It was kind of what happened with him at the end of his Williams stint. He got a bit crashy, I don't know what Alpine necessarily was thinking in making this swap. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think they should have just rain or shine. They should have let Jack do. I mean, unless Jack Doohan was really, really costing them, which I'm sure there's some sponsorship dollars that Franco Colapinto brings in because he's Argentinian. It just sucks that Jack Doohan got done the way he was. So that's kind of, the unfortunate part. So that takes us through all the drivers on the grid. Of course, we've got, when it comes to drivers, we've got a little bit of rumors floating around because, as we know, 2026 we will see the Cadillac F1 team join the grid, and the legs are starting to get a bit stronger that Sergio Perez will be making a return to the grid, which I think is a totally fair choice. He is a reliable pair of hands, and it's obviously looking more and more like the tail end of his Red Bull stint was truly the fact that the car was pretty awful to drive. And, he lost out on it. He's a reliable pair of hands. Also, Mexico loves having a driver on the grid, and he brings some significant sponsorship dollars with him. So it would be a big boon to a new team to have that kind of money base. Usually new teams come in, you have to kind of pinch the pennies and be careful with it. Also, it is looking a little bit more like in the second seat for Cadillac there, Valtteri Bottas may be that second option, which would be great. I mean, he's, again, fantastic driver, has a lot of technical expertise as well. Very good on car development and setup. Spent a lot of time alongside Lewis Hamilton and learned, I'm sure, tons from him. And Lewis has been pretty well known on the grid for being good with engineers and setup. So we will see though until the contract is signed and the ink is on the page. F1 can get a little crazy. It may be some dark horse from F2 that shows up and takes part in those Cadillac seats. But that's 2026 speculation. For the rest of the season, we'll talk just quickly as we finish up this race. We'll talk about the Constructors' Championship. McLaren far and away out in the lead. I think it's nearing mathematical impossibility to remove them from P1 in the Constructors at this point. I believe they're literally uncatchable, and when I get a couple of seconds, I will scroll my iPad so I can look at the numbers and get at least an eyeball as to how far ahead they are. That's not what I want. Yeah, they are like so far ahead. They are on 559 points. Ferrari is second on 260. So that tells you all you need to know about how the Constructors' Championship is looking. And the answer is McLaren by a long shot. Ferrari is in second. I think the way car development is going, it's a good bet to have them second. I mean, they are only, what are we looking at? 24 points ahead of Mercedes, 260 to 236. Check my math. So, I mean, realistically, if Kimi Antonelli can start performing the way that George Russell is, I think in general the Mercedes car has been the quicker car between it and Ferrari. So if, it's all going to come down to what the drivers can do with it. Antonelli could step up and make it close. Lewis Hamilton could step up in Ferrari and make it, not close at all. They could really, if he starts performing the way that Leclerc has been throughout the year, then I think there's a shot that Ferrari pretty easily clears clears Mercedes by a significant margin. I know Lewis Hamilton has talked quite a bit about wanting to get his, setup and design DNA on the 2026 car. And so I'm sure there's going to be an interesting little development battle behind the scenes between him and Leclerc as they are testing and running things in the simulator, because Lewis needs to find some pace to make his word more of the choice. Obviously, he does have the pedigree that he can kind of fall back on, but Lewis Hamilton has not been very good in these ground effect regulations, is kind of the simple way to say it. He's not done well with this generation of cars since 2022. And so I think perhaps going to the 2026 car, where that ground effect style of car is less pronounced, it might be an opportunity back for him. Of course, there's a huge power unit regulation change, but I don't believe that Ferrari has too much left in the development bucket for 2025. I think it's pretty much going to be the same car for the rest of the season. So we will have to just wait and see at this point what Ferrari can do compared to Mercedes. Mercedes as well, I think they are focusing on 2026. The word is still on the street, of course it's all speculation, is that Mercedes is leading the engine development race. They did it with the current generation of engines. They came out with a massive advantage in 2014 when they went to the V6 turbo hybrids. So, could be something we see again. And we'll see if that can maybe buy them some offset to less than ideal aerodynamics. After Ferrari, Mercedes, you then have Red Bull, which is really just being kept in by Max Verstappen. I'm going to use a rewind because I was not paying attention to the road there. Being kept in with Max Verstappen really scoring all of the team's points. 194 of the points come from Max Verstappen, and I think he's got 170 or 180 something. Because Yuki Tsunoda has 10 points total, and I don't think even all of those were Red Bull points. Granted, I think the Red Bull is just going to kind of finish where it is regardless of what the second car does, because Williams is down there in the next spot on 70 points. And it's been an interesting car over the course of the season, the Williams. Came out of the gates looking, pretty firmly best of the rest. You kind of had your McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, and then it was pretty nailed on Williams, at least the way Alex Albon was driving it. Last, quarter of the season or so after the first, half dozen races, it's definitely looked more mired in the pack there. And I'm sure they are also kind of starting to look at cost cap issues. Not cost cap issues, but just overall budget issues. They don't spend all the way up to the cost cap. They don't have the money to do it. They have signed quite a few sponsors this year, so maybe that gives them a little more leeway. Aston Martin has been better in the last few races. They are 18 points behind Williams, and I don't think that's an insurmountable gap before the end of the year. It is going to take some mid-high points finishes, some P5s, P6s, but we've seen them kind of getting up in that mix recently with Fernando Alonso. So don't count Aston Martin out. I believe that they are still putting some effort into the 2025 car. I think they still have some developments on the way before the end of the season. And then will really be interesting to see what they can do with, the 2026 car, which will be an Adrian Newey design car, and Adrian Newey is very good at designing cars. He's got quite a bit of pedigree. Sauber, only 1 point back of Aston Martin, and honestly, way more in the mix than I expected them over the course of this year, especially recently. The first few races, I said it many times, this is just a throwaway season. they're trying to just shore up whatever they can and then hand it over to Audi in 2026 and, call it a day. But they're making a good effort at it. Thanks to the quality drives from Nico Hulkenberg and quality performances from the rookie of Gabriel Bortoletto. They, I think, are the kind of team that is going to need to potentially put a little bit of effort into the 2025 car before the end. I mean, they're only 1 point off of Aston Martin, and as a result, only, 19 points off of Williams. There's some serious millions if they can get themselves up to P6 or even P5 in the Constructors' Championship before the end of the year. So they have a big opportunity. The Racing Bulls, they're still kind of hovering around where we typically see them in that P7, P6 kind of area. I could see... Hi, Lando. Turned in a little tight there, buddy, eh? I could see them getting involved with some of the fights down the stretch. But, all it takes when you're down on this kind of number of points, all it takes is one of those big results. I mean, Sauber has 51 points of it, and I've, beaten this point to death. A 15-point P3 finish is a significant chunk of those points. Next, after the Racing Bulls, you've got Haas, who I think they're probably going to stay where they are. I don't expect Alpine to really put in performances better than Haas over the course of the year, but I think Haas will have a tough time catching up to and staying with the Racing Bulls. And then when you're talking about a team, you're talking about Alpine, and there's just been so much off-track drama with Alpine that it's hard to really say that they'll be able to focus on the on-track product. I know they're already ditching their power unit. Renault will no longer be making their own engines. They're going to Mercedes next year. But it kind of seems like that team is focusing more on getting itself ready to sell and just be done with it versus getting itself ready to compete with anyone. But thank you all for joining me on a lovely little race day, or non-race week. We're in the middle of the summer break here, but a race day and me driving. And enjoy the mid-season. I will, the week of the next race, the Zandvoort Grand Prix, we'll have our regularly scheduled review preview combination. But I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.